A child phenomenon, a teenage world beater, and a larger-than-life celebrity figure. Neymar's always had a nation on his back and the weight of a family on top of him. Not like that, though. I feel like I probably ought to clarify under the circumstances. Flamboyant and skillful, or theatrical and immature. He's a polarizing figure. But his life and him as a person has been explained in a new Netflix documentary. So I thought I'd sit down and take a look at it and decide for myself.
Question 1.
Neymar.
Here we go again. Neymar on the FNG channel. What a surprise. It's been confirmed for a little while that we were going to get a full, 3-part documentary on the life and times of Brazilian Neymar. Following his career all the way from humble beginnings back in Brazil to his move into Europe and Spain, and then his current period at Paris Saint-Germain, interviewing his family, friends, and former teammates. Now, I'd like to clarify, just in case people don't understand already, there are going to be spoilers in this video. Now, really, this documentary is designed to understand him as a person and show the figure behind the football. So it starts off with some flashes of his life, including this mirror suit. Fam, I can see myself in that. And then we get a few interviews of some PSG fans outside the stadium in the local area. That sounded crazy. And when we ask these PSG fans their opinions of Neymar, the majority of them are negative. Whether it be that he's a bit too flamboyant, he doesn't necessarily care about the club, he's too much of a celebrity. And it poses the question why they think that about one of their own players, especially. So anyway, we go back to the start of the story, and we're met with Neymar's dad. Neymar. I know his antics have caused some confusion in the family tree, but this seems altogether impossible. So Neymar Sr. was a footballer back in the 80s and the 90s, predominantly playing in Brazil. But on top of that parental role, being that father figure, he's also a manager to Neymar too, which I'll probably talk about a little bit later on in the video. Now we then move on to some footage of a younger Neymar. I'm talking like the kid's 11, 12, playing some futsal and stuff, and it's bullying. Like, it's actually unfair on the rest of the kids. Call the NSPCC immediately. Or the Brazilian version of that. The NSPCC shall. Now, this segment especially, of course, because it's showing him as a youngster, is littered with old footage. And I love documentaries that fully go into details when it comes like this. A, because I like how old things are filmed. But it's also just sick to get that behind-the-scenes footage and stuff that probably hasn't been seen by anyone other than family members. Anyway, so now he's been scouted by Brazilian side Santos. And this is a point in the documentary at which we meet a man with a Santos tattoo on his forehead. I wonder who he supports. Not long after that, he's invited to a trial day at Spanish giants Real Madrid. He's only 14, he shines amongst the rest of the kids. He meets David Beckham, who then describes him as one of the nicest kids he's ever met, extremely humble, which kind of goes against what most people think Neymar to be these days. But he decides to turn down the opportunity to move to Spain and go to Real Madrid because he misses his family and friends back home in Brazil. It's a story of what could have been with Ronaldo and Benzema. They could have created a frontline R&B. That's right, only the smoothest bangers made in this studio. Who cares if she's my sister? I think we all care. Well, you're wild. Hey, that can't run. Instead of making the big leap over to Europe and Spain, he stays in Brazil with Santos. And in 2010, he makes the breakthrough into their senior squad. Suddenly we've gone from seeing a story of a kid who's trying to get into football because his dad was into it, to a guy who's now rich, famous, and has fans tattooing his name on their lips. Everything you could want, possibly, in life. But in the same season, we see the first hurdle, the first reoccurring hurdle, really, that you'll see throughout his career, and that's petulance. He starts answering back to his manager, flailing his arms around on the pitch, giving it large to his captain, and you can't really be doing that. I know you're only a kid, obviously. He's still young, he's still inexperienced, but it was a level of immaturity that people still see in him now. And his opposition manager on the day said that Santos needed to be careful, otherwise they were going to create a monster. Now, regulars of this channel may well think that I actually dislike Neymar based on the 43 titles and thumbnails he's made it into. But to be honest with you, whilst this isn't acceptable, you can't be scrapping with your boss on the sidelines. But to me, it highlights the fact that he's a victim of being so flamboyant, outspoken as well. Like, he'll come out in interviews and say whatever he wants. We always say that we want footballers footballers with characters, and then when it happens, we're so afraid of them. It's the same as Paul Pogba as well. Because like at this point, he's not done anything crazy. He's not beaten up anybody. He's not taken drugs. He's not got a girl pregnant. He then gets a girl pregnant at the age of 19. Now, in fairness, he was still pretty present in this kid's life, but I'm just shocked that his dad and manager was so understanding. Like, not only is this a crisis from a business perspective, but your son has accidentally got a girl pregnant. Fam, if this was an African household, it would be a different story. Slappings for days. A whole new belt would have to be purchased. An Amazon subscription package weekly. He would not have made it back into the living room that same evening.
Leave.
No.
Get out of here.
Back on the pitch though, and his status is continuing to rise with a 2011 Copa Libertadores victory, a Puskás award now to his name, breaking into the national team. Pelé was ready to claim all the goals he scored in Brazil, acting as an influence for his career. They're at least assists, lads. Come on, just edit it on the Wikipedia. With the first episode now culminating in his move to Spain and to Barcelona. So at this point, we've seen a young kid grow into a young adult who's still just as outspoken, still as extravagant as he was in his teenage years, but he's already starting to get that public discourse about whether he's serious enough to actually make it to his full potential. And that isn't helped when he goes to Barcelona and struggles to adapt tactically and physically at the start of episode 2 here. Episode 2, it's not as 8-season Amazon thriller. Like, but you get what I'm saying. He plays against Bilbao for Barca, has a particularly bad game, and Lionel Messi actually stumbles into the dressing room and sees him crying. And obviously, I know this is the entire point of the documentary. It wants to show his more human sides that people can resonate with him. It was kind of like interesting to hear about like a vulnerable side of Neymar and just him as a real person. Early on in the documentary, he like pranked his son for his birthday. It was all just very like natural filming and stuff, and him just spending time with his kid. He said that he was gonna get his son like some cool scooter and then instead filled the box up with loads of school books. Personally, I wouldn't have that Neymar Jr. I would have run away if that happened. That cannot run. That is correct. If I was Neymar's son, I would have run back to the favelas. There's this cool like little son-dad argument scene when he originally signs for Barcelona, because in the pictures he wants to wear his hat backwards, and his dad's like, nah fam, you need to be a little bit intellectual here. We then move forward to the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, but it's a tournament cast over a backdrop of protest and financial destruction, with the stadiums just minutes away from the favelas and streets that Neymar grew up in. Spoiler right now, it doesn't go very well. Neymar himself gets UFC'd straight in his spine.
The fight obviously stopped in a horrible way. Give us your thoughts on how it was going.
I was boxing the bleeding head off him.
And with that, the knockout stage is only just beginning. He's ruled out of the entire tournament. Now, I didn't realize this. Maybe this is common knowledge, but apparently had the blow been like 1 inch to the side, he would not have been able to walk again. Who knew 1 inch could have such devastating consequences? I just wish it did for me. Now, after the lows of the World Cup and the injuries, then the highs of winning the League and Champions League in the same season, Neymar's back in national team action, this time at the Brazilian Olympics in 2016. It goes to penalties after a 1-1 draw, and Neymar steps up to take the deciding penalty. He sends the goalkeeper the wrong way, and it's redemption kind of for the World Cup. Do people care about an Olympic gold medal as much as the world? Probably not. Now, what I found interesting about him at this point was his public perception was all over the place. Again, like, as I mentioned at the start, he's such a polarizing figure. But some of the things that people were getting onto him about, I don't really see the problems with them necessarily. Like, there was one concern that he spent too much money in his lifestyle. Now, I understand that Brazil was not very affluent at the time. There are still poverty problems there. But ultimately, he's earned the money. He's been made a star by his position in the game. He has the right to go out and spend whatever money he wants, though I agree he should probably try and help out the area that he grew up in. But as far as I'm aware, he's been doing that for most of his career anyway. There's the argument you could be too flashy and then you're not performing out on the pitch, but what he was doing for Barcelona in that legendary MSN partnership and then winning Brazil a gold medal shows that he was actually putting out the performances on the pitch, so it's calm. He's not posing with Serena Williams then dropping a 6.3 on SofaScore. He's not partying with LeBron James then bottling the Champions League with PSG. yet. And speaking of PSG, that's who Barcelona would face in the Champions League the next season. After a 4-0 slapping in the first leg, the Catalan side produced one of the maddest comebacks in Champions League history, scoring 3 late goals, 2 of which from Neymar, to progress with a 6-1 win over Unai Emery's side. That was Neymar's big night, yet the day after, the Spanish newspapers were showing Lionel Messi as the hero, having not contributed as much to the comeback. He was still in the shadows to an extent, and that's why he moved in the summer to Paris Saint-Germain. It was a record-breaking transfer, £222 million, making him the most expensive footballer of all time. He then met Mauro Icardi, and that's when he started shagging his sis. No. But it was a tough start. A major injury early in his Parisian career, and then he went out of the 2018 World Cup to Belgium. And he was known at this tournament for diving around, and even the documentary made you very aware of that. They cannot be using bowling memes of you in your own show. I would not have it. We've got live scenes of the director next time he tries to have a meeting with him. Now, I agree and also disagree with some of the stick that he got for this tournament. In terms of people complaining about his injuries, that's the style of player that he is. He's going to get fouled all the time, which means he's probably going to get injured more frequently. He's too tricky, he's too fast, and most teams try and combat him by designating one player to beat him up for 90 minutes. He can't help that his ankle got IKEA flat packed, but he used that as an excuse to cover up like flailing around all the time. And to me, certainly during that tournament, it was a bit out of control. Now, one man that featured actually more than I expected during this documentary was Neymar's dad. I haven't talked about him much, but he was pretty much the second main character in the whole storyline because he manages Neymar's life as well as obviously being his dad. Probably like every other interview, realistically, in this whole documentary is with him. It's his job to strategize Neymar's career so that when he retires, he has wealth and money to his name. But there's times where like the power dynamic between the two of them kind of breaks down a little bit. You can kind of tell, for me anyway, that Neymar is a little bit spoiled at times. There'll be times where his dad's trying to explain things to him and he's just not having any of it. What I like about the dynamic is it hasn't, working together business-wise, hasn't broken up everything. Even from when he turned down Real Madrid, Neymar Sr. let his son have that decision. Imagine the amount of money they'd have earned if he'd just gone to Real aged 14. But he was like, you know what? Nah, calm. My son doesn't want to do that. I'll let him go back to Brazil. And then we move on to part 3 that starts with like this Batman analogy that's been going on throughout the whole documentary. There's only so much Yogo Bonito and rainbow flicking that's going to have any influence on the Joker. Now, at the start of this part, I was actually really shocked by how open he was about wanting to rejoin Barcelona. It was kind of a feud between Neymar and the PSG fans at the time. He kind of discovered that he missed Spain and wanted to go back to the comfort of being at Barca. He came out in an interview in this doc and just said, nah, yeah, I just don't want to be in France anymore, I can't lie. I mean, since then he's signed a contract at PSG, so I assume the club are okay with him saying that now, but it kind of took me by surprise. Then after beating Borussia Dortmund, there was this catchphrase about the daddy returning. To be honest, I think he was just projecting a kink there. And we got taken through his and PSG's eventual Champions League final defeat to Bayern Munich. Upon losing the final, cars were set on fire in the street in true French style. But PSG fans understood, you know, this is the first time they've been to a final, and they were kind of reflective on the whole thing. And if I'm going to reflect on the storyline of Neymar at this point, because that's where the documentary cuts off filming, I think it was great to see this slightly other side of him. We all know that he's a party animal and he likes living his life and being extravagant and spending his money and dyeing his hair. Don't ever do the orange thing again. It was cool to see him spending loads of time with his son, for example, which he got to do way more when COVID struck in the 3rd episode. And yeah, he can be a bit spoiled, and yeah, he can be a bit outspoken. But overall, it kind of, again, reinforced the idea to me that because he stands out so much as a footballer and as a personality in the game, he's ultimately going to get targeted more. Not to mention, again, every time his sister's birthday rolls around, Neymar, if you're watching this, you got to cut that out, because it is going to make everyone think certain things. But for me, in a generation, comparatively speaking, obviously, where Brazil was lacking, in my opinion, when you look at the Brazil teams of old, you know, the Ronaldo, Rivaldo, Ronaldinho era, for example, he was a shining light in a bit more of an average generation. And more importantly, he was an actual entertaining footballer. Forget the maths and the tactics for a second. It's sick to see someone whip out a rainbow flick for no good reason. I want to see a flip flap every now and again. For some reason, that sounds weird to say. But crucially, he's an entertainer on and off the pitch. And I guess the criticism and whatever else is always going to come with that. It was shot really well, as Netflix documentaries always are. Give it a good viewing, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. If you enjoyed this video, though, feel free to slap a like on it, and of course, subscribe if you are new to the channel. You can also follow me on social media. It is at @theofficialfng on Twitter and on Insta. It's been a pleasure ranting at you guys today. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy yourselves, and goodbye.